Dylan is going to be talking about something entirely different, which is the use of AI to predict whether or not a play was written by Shakespeare. So take it away, Dylan.
Thanks, Nisha. Let me share my screen. So everyone can see this, I hope. Let me present.
Yes, we can see it.
So for my project, it's called To Be Shakespeare or Not to Be Shakespeare, Bringing AI Back in Time. And for my project, I took data from Shakespearean and non-Shakespearean texts, and I trained the AI on them. And then I chose the AI that best analyzed the data and asked it whether it thought a disputed Shakespearean play was actually written by Shakespeare himself. So my motivation for the problem, I chose this project because I wanted to learn more about AI, and I thought it would be interesting to apply it to something like literature. And Shakespeare is one of the most famous writers, so I decided to combine his plays and AI to create a project. I chose Shakespeare's All's Well That Ends Well as my text because it has a history of having its authorship disputed. And Shakespeare's authorship has been disputed all the way back to the 19th century, in part because he wrote so many plays in such a short amount of time and at such a young age. And authors such as Christopher Marlowe have been suggested by some as the true author of some of Shakespeare's plays. And specifically, All's Well That Ends Well has been thought by some scholars to have been written by Shakespeare and another author, Thomas Middleton. And they thought that some specific words resembled Middleton's writing and not Shakespeare's, which led them to think that Shakespeare had collaborators on the play. And if successful, this project could have implications for other projects, especially authorship verification, which is basically telling the true author of a certain writing. And because of its implications on other studies, it seemed like this project could be beneficial. So what are my steps in this project? The first thing I did was I found a Shakespearean play that was in dispute, which was All's Well That Ends Well. The next thing I did was I collected the text of 16 Shakespearean and 8 non-Shakespearean plays from the same era and genre as All's Well That Ends Well. And in this case, that is 16th and 17th century comedies. Next thing I did is I divided each of the plays by acts in order to create enough data points for the AI to test. And after trying to use Python to analyze the text, I realized I didn't have the skill set yet to use Python. So I instead found a workaround, which is the website wordcounter.net. And I used it to find the characteristics of each act of each play and calculated the 3 features for my project, which were average word length, average sentence length, and word frequency. Then I built a table with rows for each act of the plays, excluding All's Well That Ends Well, because that's what I wanted to test. And then the columns of the 3 features identified previously that I talked about a little bit. And then I added a final column that indicated if each act was Shakespearean or non-Shakespearean. And after that, I downloaded the table into a CSV file format and then went to navigator.pixida.ai to use the publicly available AI algorithms. I imported my table into the website, and the algorithms that were appropriate for my project were classifier algorithms, and that kind of made sense for my project because I had kind of a yes or no binary question, which I was trying to answer. So I ran my data against the 3 classifier algorithms, and they all used a random selection of 80% of the data to predict the outcome of the remaining 20% of the data. And the AI algorithm that worked the best at about 95% accuracy was called Random Forest Classifier. So I finally applied Random Forest Classifier, or RFC, to the features of All's Well That Ends Well, and it predicted whether it was or was not written by Shakespeare. And I'll share my results a little bit later. So for my data, I collected my data set by downloading Shakespearean and non-Shakespearean plays from a variety of websites. Then I broke each play into acts to increase the data size and imported the text into wordcounter.net, which I talked about a little bit earlier, but it's basically a free tool that analyzes text and summarizes various data points. Like you could find the average number of words in a sentence on that website, for example. And then I used Google Sheets to create a table of the data, and I imported that table into the Navigator for AI analysis. And this picture down below is part of my data set of Shakespearean and non-Shakespearean plays that I used to train my AI, and shown below actually are 2 of the Shakespearean plays I used, as well as 2 non-Shakespearean plays broken into acts to increase the number of data points. And when I tested these data points, I didn't include the names of the plays because I wanted the AI to focus solely on the data instead of the title. So when I inserted, so for my AI, sorry, one sec. When I inserted my Google Sheet into the navigator, I trained the AI on whether Shakespeare wrote the play or not. And there were 3 AI algorithms that the website suggested to me, which were random forest classifier, pay neighbors classifier, and MLP classifier. And when they were automatically trained, the algorithm random forest classifier, or RFC, had the highest intelligence based off my data set. So I then tested the AI to see if it thought that the disputed play in question, which was Also That Ends Well, was actually written by Shakespeare by using random forest classifier. And for software and apps, I didn't exactly build any apps or Python programs, but I did use existing AI algorithms for my project. So here are a couple images for my results. The picture up top is the confusion matrix for a random forest classifier, and it shows the number of times the algorithm incorrectly and correctly predicted the author of the 24 data points that they were testing. And when the no's line up, it basically means that the AI predicted the true value. And when the yeses line up, the same thing. So this is the one outlier that the random forest classifier got wrong in the testing. And then this picture to the right basically is just a chart that shows the 3 different algorithms that the AI decided were the best fits for my data set. And you can see the top line is random forest classifier, and it had the highest accuracy at about 95%. And then the picture down below is the feature importance for a random forest classifier, and it shows how much the algorithm weighted each of the 3 features in its decision trees. And I'll talk about decision trees in a little bit. So average sentence length was the most important when the AI decided about if it was written by Shakespeare or not. So this is pictures called a decision tree, and random forest classifier used 10 of these. This is just one of the 10 that was used to predict the authorship of certain plays in my case. And the top line in each box is called a condition, and it's a feature that is applied to a sample data point to see if the condition is met. It's kind of like a yes or no question. And this moves the data point to the next box, which applies a similar procedure with a different condition to the same data point. And in other decision trees, the number of levels vary, but in this example, you can see there are 3 levels. The bottom level doesn't give a condition to be met, but instead provides the predicted outcome for the data points. And random forest classifier used this decision tree along with 9 other decision trees to come to a collective prediction based on a majority vote among the decision trees. So they used this one and 9 others to make a vote. And what I basically learned was that with 95% accuracy, random forest classifier predicted that All's Well That Ends Well was written by Shakespeare. And this confirms my hypothesis because I also thought that All's Well That Ends Well was written by Shakespeare. And this also shows the power of AI because most literary scholars will look at this question and take an approach focused on the little details in the plays. But the AI takes a step back and finds patterns in the data to make its judgments, which I thought was kind of interesting. And in the future, one question I thought of while working on this project was why some algorithms work better than others for my project. And I know that the random forest classifier used a decision tree model to determine the prediction, but I kind of wondered why it worked better than the other decision tree models out there. So if I were to pursue this topic farther, I might try to build my own AI algorithm while at the same time learning which characteristics might make my algorithm the best for my specific topic. Another way I could expand on this project would to be to apply it to other writing samples other than plays, and that way I can include more features like paragraph length, for example, that didn't really apply to plays in this case. So I didn't use them in this case. But if I looked at other things like short stories, I might be able to include other features, which would help strengthen my case. And I could also learn Python and use it in the future to increase confidence in my data set and expand the number of features. And thanks for watching. If there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Dylan. I think one of the things that I like most about your project is that it's a very nice, application of AI. That sometimes when we think AI, we think very scientific, but it turns out it has a lot of application in literature as well. So, no, very cool. If anybody has any questions, please go ahead and put them on the chat or on the Q&A. Let's see. So I had one question, which was, are there other plays of the same time period that may not be comedies or, may not be Shakespeare that you think, you could apply this to?
So I did look at other areas of literature in the specific plays like comedies and tragedies,
Mhm.
but I ended up settling on a certain section, and also that ends well is I think it's a comedy. So
I believe it is, yes, if I
yeah.
remember what it is.
And
Yes.
the other sections didn't have enough data points because again, these are plays that were written a very long time ago. And although Shakespeare is a very famous author and he probably has the most of certain plays from that time period, when I had to find a non-Shakespearean data set, there weren't enough plays that had confidence that I could reliably trust to have correct data. So I ended up focusing on the comedy section because the other sections didn't have enough data for me to find.
Makes sense. And that's a common problem. Thank you so much, Dylan. Very nicely done. Thank
Thank you.
you.